Years ago, I would joke and I would say, my goal is to be able to do music and produce music and make music from the mountains in Colorado. And part of it is because when I was growing up, I always loved Colorado. We came here for a few vacations and I just love the mountains. So I would always jokingly say that. And it was just this imagery of creating a studio space that I could work on music but have kind of a lifestyle that appealed to me.
Yeah, it was interesting because when we met, he was in business school. So he was actually studying business. So it wasn't really music driven, but he did everything else he did was music related. And so he always, used to DJ and, mix stuff and do a lot of production out of the house and things like that. And he just seemed like that was really his passion, more than the business was just kind of a technicality, the business degree.
As I graduated, all of my friends and people that were close to me started to express the same things that I was afraid of, if you will, or the same concerns that I had about the quote-unquote music business they were having, whether I had friends going into the medical profession, going into finance, doing all these jobs, and when they were starting out, they were saying, man, the hours are crazy, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, it's so competitive, and it dawned on me, wow, that's exactly what I'm thinking about the music business, but that's what I love.
When Vince finished the program, he had shown us many times his abilities and what he was capable of, or what we certainly felt he was. So that's the point where you start looking at, okay, where can we help him go next? And what we had found is we had an opportunity at the Hit Factory criteria, which were very few and far between. It's one of those places that it's extremely difficult to get in that door.
So I got a call to get an interview at the Hit Factory in Miami. And the Hit Factory is one of the top studios on planet Earth. And not only are there so few positions as entry-level assistants, there's even fewer to move up as next-level engineers. And it takes a lot of time and energy doing everything but music-related activities. You start to really ask yourself, what's worth the cost here? What am I doing here? I haven't done anything music-related in months, and you work these crazy hours because then after a few months you will work during the sessions, but the studio was so busy that you were never in the room. You were on a constant food run. And it's very hard, and you're constantly asking yourself, and it is a reality check of every proportion of what you thought you were going to do and what you were doing and how the disparity of that was so different. And so how are you going to handle that pressure? How are you going to do those things? And so the management of the studio was pretty damn smart because they knew everyone and how they were going to handle it. And not until you were ready to sit in any kind of chair that did anything relating to music around a client that was paying top dollar, not until they were sure that you could sit there and keep your cool when nothing was good enough, did you ever have a shot at anything. And some people never understood that. And there were times when I knew that, but still you're doing it so long that you're really starting to question, damn, am I ever gonna do anything? And it's very hard. I'd walk around and I would look at all these gold records and I said, man, one day if I could just get one of these. And they're like mirrors, so I would see my reflection and it became this kind of moment when I say, man, I can't wait till I can look in the reflection of my first, of any gold record, just one. And I got that with the Kevin Little project, and it was amazing because it wasn't through what I was doing at the Hit Factory. There was my job at the Hit Factory as an assistant, and then I would go home and remix these artists. And after a while, we became very busy remixing, and it became kind of my meat and potatoes. We would remix all these artists, from Britney Spears, Destiny's Child, Madonna, Missy Elliott, all these artists, and some of them were at the Hit Factory, which was crazy. And these two worlds started to kind of grow, and I was getting so busy in my own studio at home that I asked myself an impossible question. Do I quit the hit factory, which could be the pathway to real success, or do I try to continue to work on my own production? And I was really torn, and it was at the time the hardest decision that I ever made. And so I went up to the manager's office, and we had a good relationship at the time, and I said, Trevor, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he stopped and he put it, normally wouldn't really be paying attention to you, and he put his pen down and he looked up and he said, really? Are you sure? And it was one of those looks like, oh shit, am I sure? Well, I thought I was sure until I got that look. But I was sure, and I didn't really back down, and I said yes. And I was nervous and shaking and the whole 9 yards, and that was it. I left, and the next morning I got a phone call from Trevor. Hey, do you want to engineer?
Once he started teaching at SAE, I think that's when it became very clear to him or apparent that he really liked the education component of music. So he always enjoyed teaching a lot. And then he did a lot of the lecture series with Apple too, and he always seemed very rejuvenated, when he had a big lecture or a big class and people were excited about what he was teaching. He always seemed to kind of feed off of that a lot.
Not only did I feel good about giving things I had learned to the students that were there, but they actually helped me learn, because I was having to talk about things that I had learned, talk about how I make music, talk about how I produce music, which forced me to think in different ways to have to explain that. And not only that, the way that they were challenging me and then the way that they would question me, well, why do you do that? Why do you do that? And I never thought about that stuff before. So I found not only the good feeling of sharing the education, but also being educated and challenging of why I do what I do, and learning sometimes from them as well. And so it's become an amazing part of my career and something I love doing, and being able to be involved in educational things to teach others and teach aspiring musicians has become a very meaningful part of my career. I'm excited to show my process. And one of the things that's amazing about education is when you get to see how other people do it, because there's not one right way to do it. There is no do this, do this, do this, do this always, and you're gonna get this. Music is creativity. There's 1,000 ways to do these things. There's artists and producers that are coming up with new ways. And it's exciting for me to be a part of that world and to show, well, this has worked for me. It's not the only way, of course, but hey, this has worked for me, and this is where I come from. And being challenged again and having those questions will help me evolve as well. And now the way that the modern world works with the democratization of everything, and with technology moving so fast, anybody can make music. And that's one of the most exciting things too, where all it can do is help the technology get better, help the music get better, and help other people learn how to express themselves creatively. And so to be a part of that, to me, is very fulfilling. The first job I got placed at outside of SAE was directly with Lauryn Hill, who was working on her follow-up album at the time, in the top of a high-rise condo on Miami Beach. We found that she would write these songs with her acoustic guitar, and she would just sit and play with her acoustic guitar, and they were incredible. The voice was amazing, the timing, there was so much soul and artistry in that. But if we went and recorded a drum track first, which was traditionally what you would do, and then have her come in and do her parts over a drummer's tempo, all the soul was gone. And so what we did was we would record her first with her and a microphone. And we didn't even do those separately. We had this huge separation with about 10 microphones to get different sounds that we could play with, separated by all these foam panels, and she would sit with her guitar in between this thing we made. At one point we would put a microphone in a motorcycle helmet. And it was all to try to capture her voice isolated from the guitar, but allowing her to play it at the same time. But one of the things we did after that was we would record a drummer that tried to keep up with her tempo, which of course is humanly impossible. So one of my jobs at that point became to sit there for days and days and days and slice up the drums. And this was before now you could beat map anything with push of a button. And I would by hand cut every single drum and line it up with her timing. And it took me days, and it was so arduous and it was so detailed, but I loved it. It was just incredible. And sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes you could tell it was chopped up, and sometimes, it did work, but that experience was just amazing. So my whole family lives here. My wife Juliana and I recently had twins. And they are 7 months old now, and we're one big happy family here in the new house. And we've done different changes to the house, very subtle, that are just more representative of who we are. The biggest piece of that would be a lot of the artwork that's around the house. We've either it's photography that we've taken pictures of life events, or for example, we have a collage with tons of family pictures, and when you step back, it's the sidewalk pattern in Copacabana and Rio de Janeiro, where Juliana, my wife, is from, even to the paintings here in the music room that Juliana and I painted. So everything's very personal in the house. So over the past year, we've designed the studio that I have, and we've built it from the ground up. It's fully isolated, it's gonna have full treatments on the inside, and it's gonna be the space that I've always dreamed of. And that is kind of the culmination of where I've ended up. When I started working, I said, I can't wait till my studio's in an outside commercial facility. I'll feel like I've arrived. And over the years, things have changed so much that my dream shifted to be having that perfect studio working, creative environment close to my house, close to my family, close to other things that mean a lot to me. And that's what I've created here. One of the things about having kids recently is starting to think, obviously, about legacy and about, you know, the heritage of your family and what you'll leave for your kids and what you'll teach your kids. And music's obviously a huge part of that. I'm so curious to see how they'll grow up with music and how they'll either attach to it or maybe go in a different direction. And obviously, I'd love them to be involved in music, but I grew up in a very free environment where I wasn't forced to do one thing or the other and could experiment a lot of stuff. So I want the same for them. It is a funny story though, very early on, I sat my son Enzo down on my lap and I sat at the piano and played a couple of notes and he immediately started crying. So I think the loud noise scared him. So we're not off to a good start, but either way, it'll be great to see how music's a part of their life. There's always that moment when you start and there's a blank page on the computer, which is effectively silence. There's nothing. And there's always that moment of nervousness and maybe a little self-doubt and maybe a little bit of, wow, can I get to that place again when I've found a musical idea? This really sounds great. And then, you know, it's almost like, you know, really a roller coaster in many senses. You're kind of climbing this hill, trying to find that piece of creativity. What's gonna be this thing that really sets this record apart? What's gonna be that one piece of creativity, whether it's a bass line or a certain sound or a melody that you know you have something, and from then on out it just all flows. But getting to that point is always very hard, and it's crazy because even after you've done it for so many years and you've done it so many times, there's always that, wow, can I do it again? Because creativity is not something you can just walk into the studio like the lights and switch it on. I know that I'm gonna go in there today and come up with a good melody. That no one can guarantee that. Now you can learn processes that help you stay creative and help you land on good ideas. And part of that is just always staying in the studio and always staying in the creative flow. But there's always that moment. Do we have it? And if we don't, can we get it? And then when you get there, then it's just the best thing on planet Earth. And sometimes it's an accident. You know, I can tell you records that I've worked on where there's been an accidental effect that went off or an accidental edit or something accidental that you think is a mistake, but then you stop and listen, you're just like, wow, that's actually pretty cool. I didn't really intend for that, but yeah, that's cool, let's go with it. And then that's the piece that really takes you to that place where you say, I have something, let's develop it and let's go on. You really have to love it, you know, and be passionate about it. And also, for me, I learned that the alternative of anything else that I would want to do, besides not loving it, everything else that's worthwhile doing is super hard. And when I realized that, and when I kind of put it into perspective of, you know, I'd rather be doing music, even if it's not, you know, the perfect scenario, than compromise and do something else, being afraid, you know, to try it.